The camera light turned red, a small glowing dot on top of the lens, and everyone in the living room went quiet. They had moved the furniture to make space. 2 soft boxes hummed in the corners. A boom mic hovered above my head. Outside the big window behind me, the Texas evening pressed against the glass, hot and orange. "Whenever you are ready, Ms. Hart," the producer said. "Just talk like you would to a friend." I folded my hands over my knees. The wedding ring I still wore clicked softly against the armrest. "When your only child decides you are worth more dead than alive," I said, "it does not start with a gun or a knife. It starts with people whispering 3 feet away because they think you cannot hear." The producer glanced at the cameraman. Someone nodded. They love that kind of line. I looked past the lens into the memory that still smelled like bleach and stale coffee. It had been 4 months earlier. Same red light, different machine. The monitor beside my hospital bed beeped in a steady rhythm. A tiny red dot pulsed on its screen, counting out my heartbeats like a bored metronome. The room was cold in that particular hospital way. Overcooled air, fluorescent lights, everything scrubbed in harsh white. I kept my eyes closed and my breathing slow. The nurses thought I slept most of the day. They wrote "confused" in my chart. They wrote "possible early dementia." Brooke had helped them come to that conclusion, of course. At the foot of my bed, I heard the rustle of clothing, the squeak of plastic chairs. Shoes shifting. A whisper. "She is out," Brooke murmured. "Dr. Patel said the sedatives hit her hard." My son did not answer at first. I knew his weight in a room. He had the kind of presence that pushed the air aside without meaning to. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than usual. "I do not like talking about this here. Do you want to pay another 40 grand to the people in Baton Rouge?" Brooke said. "Or do you want to grow a spine?" The cotton sheet over my chest suddenly felt heavier. Baton Rouge. Gambling. I had thought the Atlantic City disaster would be the last time. Silly me. "I am working on it," Danny muttered. "No, you are not." Her chair creaked as she leaned closer. I could picture her perfect ponytail, neat blazer, the faint perfume that clung to every room after she left. "We have an insurance policy that matures at $3 million if she dies. Natural causes, accidental, whatever. You said yourself her heart is weak." "My mother is not a scratched lottery ticket," he said. There was the soft click of a pen. Brooke always clicked pens when she was irritated. I had seen her do it in boardrooms, at dinners, in my kitchen. "It is not her heart that is weak," Brooke said. "It is her age. She looks tired, she mixes up names, she forgets drawers open. Digoxin does the rest slow enough that nobody asks questions." Digoxin. So she had switched to that. Digitalis in modern packaging. I filed the word away. Habit. Heartline had taught me that the smallest log entry could save a company. Or a life. "I thought the pills were just to help her sleep," Danny whispered. "They mimic heart failure, confusion, elderly stuff," Brooke replied. "By the time anyone notices, it will be over. Except it is not happening fast enough. Her labs keep stabilizing. Her doctor is actually talking about adjusting her meds down." They were close enough that I could feel a faint gust of air when Brooke gestured. "If it keeps dragging on, those guys will come looking for their money," she said. "They do not send polite letters. So, what you want to speed things up?" The words landed on my skin like ice. I made sure my breathing did not change. "We take her home," Brooke said, and I heard the soft slap of her palm against her thigh, like she was outlining a sales pitch. "We get her out of here, away from nosy nurses and cameras and doctors who write down every bruise. Old house, faulty wiring, too many plugged-in appliances. Have you seen her kitchen? One night something shorts out. Fire, smoke inhalation, everyone is very sad. You pay your debts, we move on." There was a silence that buzzed in my ears. "Danny," she pressed, "she leaves everything to you, to us. Her will is public record." "I know," he said. "I have seen it." "Then stop acting like you have a choice. This is a math problem. 3 million solves all of it." The monitor beside me kept beeping. The red dot blinked and blinked. I focused on it until my racing heart settled enough for the machine not to rat me out. My son cleared his throat. "There are cameras in the halls," he said. "Nurses check vitals every hour. If anything happens here and somebody smells smoke, we are toast." "That is why we do it at home," Brooke replied, exasperation bleeding through the hushed tone. "Tonight. Dr. Patel will sign her out at 5. We take her back to that charming fire trap. She refuses to renovate, cook her dinner, tuck her in, go to Ember and Oak for a very photogenic date night. 40 minutes away, lots of witnesses, lots of cell phone footage. While we are downtown, the old wiring finally catches up with her poor little heart." Her voice softened on the last words. I had seen that act melt investors. "You do not know that the fire will kill her," Danny said. "What if she wakes up and calls 911 or something?" She will not wake up, Brooke replied. I will give her double the usual dose first. She will sleep right through it. My cuffed arm itched. I wanted to rip the IV out and sit up, wrap both hands around Brooke's perfect throat. Instead, I wiggled my fingers under the blanket just enough to feel my own pulse. You are shaking, Danny said. Because I am the only adult in the room, Brooke snapped. Then her voice smoothed over again. Look, she is 72. She built an empire. She is tired. This way it is quick. No hospice, no months of bills, no watching her fade. You are good at making murder sound like mercy. You are good at pretending it is not already happening, she shot back. You have been feeding her those pills for months. The red dot blinked. The beep kept its tempo. Somewhere in the hall, a cart rolled past wheels squeaking. A nurse laughed at something the sound muffled by the door. If I had been the woman they thought I was, I might have died right there from shock. But Heartline had given me one stubborn advantage. Years of building a company in a world that did not want me there had layered steel under my skin. People underestimated old women. They underestimated how much data we carried. Footsteps approached the bed. I felt a hand on my fingers. My son's, warm, slightly damp. We will do it at home, he whispered. One last thing, then all of this is over. Brooke's hand joined his. Rings clicked. She squeezed hard enough that my knuckles almost popped. Sleep well tonight, Eve, she whispered in my ear, breath warm. No alarms, no more hospitals. My eyelids did not flicker. My lips stayed slack. I let a soft snore escape to sell the part. They stood there a moment longer, then moved away. The door opened with a soft hydraulic sigh. Closed again. Their voices faded down the hall. The monitor beeped on. The red light blinked. I opened my eyes just enough to see the reflection of that small red dot in the blank TV screen on the wall. One bright warning in a room full of people too busy to look up. I had spent 40 years logging everything that mattered. Server logs, bug reports, board minutes, backups of backups. Somewhere along the way I had started doing it with people too. Dates, words, patterns. In the bed that still smelled like disinfectant, I stared at the ceiling and let every detail settle into place. The smell of Brooke's perfume, the tremor in Danny's voice, the word Baton Rouge, ember and oak, wiring, insurance, digoxin. Tonight. By the time a nurse came in to check my vitals, I had my eyes closed again and my face arranged into the vague smile of someone who did not know what year it was. She wrapped the cuff around my arm, glanced at the monitor, and wrote something in my chart. How are we doing, Ms. Hart? She asked brightly. I let my gaze slide past her, like it did on the bad days, and mumbled something about David just clear enough to sound pitiful. She patted my hand and left. The door side shut. The red dot blinked. I watched it until my vision blurred, then closed my eyes for real and took a slow breath. They thought they were writing the last line of my story. I had not even started editing. They discharged me on a Thursday afternoon, the kind of day Austin heat sticks to your skin. By 4 o'clock, a nurse was steering me down the hallway in a wheelchair. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Every few feet, a red exit sign glowed in the corner of my vision. I watched them pass like checkpoints. Brooke walked beside us, heels clicking on the linoleum. She carried my overnight bag on one arm and a stack of papers on the other. She had put on a soft cardigan for the occasion, something pastel that made her look gentle. See, Eve, we told you, she said, leaning down so the nurse could hear. Home is better than staring at these walls. Danny trailed behind a hand shoved in his pockets. He kept looking at his phone, then at my face, then at the floor. His hair needed a trim. He had chewed his thumbnail raw. At the elevator, the nurse hit the button and the arrow lit up red. All set with your meds, Brooke told her. We picked up the new prescriptions from pharmacy. I will organize everything when we get home. Good, the nurse said, smiling at me. Your daughter-in-law is very on top of things. She is, I said, my voice wobbling just enough. She keeps me from losing my head. Brooke laughed lightly, like that was a harmless joke. The elevator doors opened and we rolled inside. In the parking lot, the heat hit like a wall. The air smelled of asphalt and exhaust. A cicada buzzed high in one of the scrubby trees that passed for landscaping. Danny helped me into the front seat of their SUV, one hand under my arm. I made my grip weaker than it needed to be. Let him think I needed him to stand. He buckled the seatbelt for me and shut the door carefully. Through the tinted glass, I watched Brooke tuck the wheelchair into the trunk and slam it closed. She checked her reflection in the rear window, smoothed her hair, and pulled out her phone. The screen lit up with a text thread long enough that she had to scroll. She climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and the air conditioning blasted my face. You comfortable back there? She asked Danny as they pulled out of the hospital circle drive. Yeah. His voice already sounded far away. We merged onto the highway. Austin blurred past in blocks of concrete and glass. A billboard advertising Ember and Oak flashed by on the right, a giant stake on a dark plate, a flame painted behind it. Brooke tapped the steering wheel. "We should try their bone marrow tonight," she said. "It is supposed to be incredible." "Maybe," Danny answered. I let my head rest against the window and angled my body so my face was turned slightly away. My eyes were open only a sliver. In the reflection I could see them clearly. Brooke alert, calculating the smallest line of tension at her jaw. Danny's slumped mouth pressed in a hard line. Our house sat on the edge of the hills west of the city. The SUV climbed the winding road past live oaks and patchy dry grass, then turned into the gravel driveway that curved up to the front porch. The ranch house looked the way it always had. Low, wide, with a deep porch and white rocking chairs, the paint a little weathered. The sun sat low enough to throw a rust-colored glow across the front. Heat shimmered above the gravel. Mr. Ortiz from 2 houses down was out front coiling a garden hose. He shaded his eyes with one hand when he saw the SUV. "Ms. Hart is back," he called half to himself. On the other side, Mia sat on her porch steps with a camera around her neck, laptop open on her knees. She paused whatever she was editing and watched our car pull in, curiosity bright on her face. Brooke gave them both a cheerful wave and a big smile, the sort that showed all her teeth. "Perfect," she murmured under her breath as she parked. "Witnesses." She came around to my side, opening the door before Danny could. "Come on, Eve," she said, pitch warmer now. "Let us get you inside and out of this heat." Inside, the cool air smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood. The entryway was shaded, the light from the back windows soft and golden. For a moment I saw the house the way it had been when David and I first moved in. Boxes everywhere. Danny at 8 running down the hall with a cardboard rocket ship over his head, socks sliding on the new hardwood. Then the picture shifted back to now. Same house, different story. Danny carried my bag into the bedroom while Brooke fussed with throw pillows and curtains. "Sit," she told me, pressing my shoulders until I sank onto the edge of the bed. "We will do a quick tour of the medication schedule, okay?" "Okay," I said, letting my gaze wander as if I had trouble focusing. From this angle I could see the ceiling in the hallway. The smoke detector above the guest bathroom was intact, but the one closest to the kitchen had a small gap where the cover met the ceiling like someone had twisted it a little too far. A fine ring of dust around its base told me it had been that way for weeks. Brooke set a plastic pill organizer on the nightstand. Days of the week printed in cheerful blue. She opened her purse and pulled out several orange bottles. The labels bore my name in sharp black letters. The medication names were correct or close enough to what Dr. Patel had said, but the pills inside were not the same shape as the last batch. She noticed my eyes on them and smiled. "Dr. Patel adjusted your heart meds," she said. "These are the new ones. They will help you sleep and keep your rhythm steady." "Too many new things," I murmured. She reached out and patted my knee. "That is why you have us," she said. "You do not have to remember everything." Danny lingered in the doorway, watching. "Do you need help with anything else, Mom?" he asked. I turned my head slowly toward him, squinting like it took effort to bring his face into focus. "You shaved," I said. He touched his chin, startled. For a second he smiled the way he had as a boy when I noticed he had done something on his own. "Yeah," he said. "Figured it was time." Then the moment passed and the shadows under his eyes returned. Brooke clapped her hands once, brisk again. "So, here's the plan," she said louder now, voice carrying enough for the hallway. "We are going to make you something soft to eat, settle you in, then Danny and I have a dinner reservation in town. Big fancy steak place. We will be gone a few hours. You will have the house to yourself, peace and quiet." She glanced at the bedroom doorway where the sound might travel farther. It was not for me. It was for any ear that happened to be passing by outside. She walked to the nightstand lamp and clicked it on. The small red indicator on the cord lit up. I saw her eyes flick toward it and away. "In case you need anything," she said. "Your phone is right here, but try to rest all right." They left me there for a while, puttering in the kitchen. Cupboard doors opened and closed. Silverware clinked. The smell of chicken broth drifted down the hall. I ate half the soup they brought, pushing the rest around with my spoon. When Brooke turned away, I tilted the pill she had set beside my bowl into my napkin and folded it shut in my fist. "Not hungry?" she asked. "Full," I said. "Hospitals do not make you hungry." She brushed a hand over my hair, fingers barely touching my scalp. "We will be back before you know it," she said. At the front door, I listened to them go through the motions. Key's Brooke's laugh, Danny's low answers. The door opened. The summer air rushed in. It closed again with a solid click. Gravel crunched under tires as the SUV pulled away down the long drive. For the first time all day, the house was completely silent. I set the soup bowl aside, dropped the napkin with the hidden pill into the trash can, and stood up without holding on to anything. My knees complained, but they held. In the hallway, the wood floor felt familiar under my bare feet. I walked past the crooked smoke detector and ran my fingers along the wall until they found the round plastic cover. It hung loose. A twist and a tug brought it fully into my hand. The battery was missing. I looked up at the empty socket and then at the others along the hall. 2 more had the same faint line of dust around their edges. In my office at the end of the hall, the air was cooler. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting in a soft strip of light across the desk. The safe behind the bookshelf still sat where David had installed it. I moved the row of framed photographs aside and pressed my fingers to the keypad. The cold metal woke something steady in me. 7749. The latch clicked. Inside lay what mattered. A slim black phone separate from the one my family knew. A small stack of flash drives in labeled sleeves. A leather notebook. A plain white envelope marked with today's date in my handwriting. I picked up the phone and pressed a contact that had no name, only the letters HL-SEC. It rang once. "Heartline Security," a familiar voice answered. "This is Collins." "Hello, Tom. I said. "This is Evelyn Hart." There was the slightest pause. "Yes, ma'am. What can we do for you?" I looked at the closed office door, the hallway beyond the ceiling above my head. "I'm at my home," I said. "I need fire and police on standby. Activate code Amber." Chairs creaked on the other end. The typing grew louder. "Understood," he said. "Code Amber confirmed. Team is mobilizing. We have your cameras online. Are you in immediate danger?" "Not yet," I said, "but the evening is young." I hung up and set the phone on the desk. One by one, I pulled the fake medication bottles from the bathroom cabinet, placing them in a plastic bag. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder where I had saved scanned copies of the insurance policy that named Danny and Brooke as beneficiaries, along with the gambling debt reports my investigator had sent 3 weeks ago. I slid the notebook into my pocket. When I finished, I walked back down the hall and climbed the stairs to the second floor, hand gliding over the banister that David had sanded himself. At the landing, I crossed to the front guest room. From its window, I could see the entire driveway, the front yard, the road beyond. The sun was drifting lower, turning the gravel a deeper gold. The air outside shimmered above the hood of my car. I stood there for a long moment, watching the empty curve of asphalt between the house and the street, listening to the quiet tick of the old hallway clock, feeling the slow, steady beat of my own heart. The red light on the smoke detector in the corner blinked back at me. The light outside the guest room window slid from gold to copper to a flat, bruised purple. From up there, I could see the curve of the road, the mailbox at the end of the drive, the empty space where the SUV had disappeared. The glass was warm under my fingertips. The air conditioner hummed behind me, a steady mechanical breath that made the house feel more hollow than cool. Somewhere down the hill, out of sight, Heartline Security and whoever Collins had called were staging. I did not know exactly where. That was their business. Mine was this view and in the notebook in my pocket. I watched until the first pinprick of headlights appeared around the bend. They grew larger, then swung into my driveway, throwing white beams across the front porch. Gravel crunched, the engine cut. The sudden quiet after the rumble made my ears ring. The driver door opened. Brooke stepped out first. From above, she looked smaller, but her movements were sharp. She straightened, rolled her shoulders once, then walked to the back of the SUV. When Danny joined her, she lifted the trunk. The smell reached me even through the closed window. Faint but distinct. Gasoline. It rode up on the evening air, thin at first, then thicker as they hauled 2 red plastic cans from the back. Danny hesitated, fingers tight around the handle of his can. He glanced up at the house. For a second, I thought he might see me in the window, a pale blur against the dim room, but his gaze slid past and dropped to the ground. They moved apart, each taking one side of the house. Brooke tipped her can and began to pour a steady ribbon of dark liquid, tracing along the base of the wall, soaking into the dry shrubs and mulch. Danny copied her on the opposite side slower, his stream breaking off and starting again. The last of the sunlight caught the sheen on the wet line. From the guest room corner, the smoke detector light blinked red, a small metronome keeping time. 1, 2, 3. My hand found the edge of the window frame. My knuckles went white for a moment, then relaxed. When they had emptied the cans, they stashed them near the front gate behind the low stone wall where the wild grass grew higher. Brooke brushed her palms together as if dusting off flour. She said something I could not hear and touched Danny's arm. He flinched at the contact. They went up the front steps. Brooke smoothed her hair, pulled her features into a worried mask, and reached for the knob. By the time the latch clicked, I was seated in the living room. The lamp beside my chair cast a soft pool of light. The curtains were open, so the last scraps of dusk outlined the shapes of the people around me. Captain Jonah Ruiz stood near the fireplace, arms folded, expression unreadable. His navy jacket bore the emblem of Austin Fire. His boots left faint traces of dust on my rug. Detective Naomi Bridges sat on the edge of the opposite armchair, notebook open pen poised. One of the Heartline security men waited near the hallway arch broad shoulders blocking the view of the rest of the house. The front door swung in. Brooke stopped so fast that Danny nearly walked into her. Her eyes found me first. "Eve," she breathed, voice lifting into a note of rehearsed relief. "Thank God. We saw smoke from the road. We thought something had happened." Danny's gaze ping-ponged from me to Jonah to Naomi and back. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. Brooke recovered almost immediately. She stepped inside, one hand pressed to her chest. "What is going on?" she asked. "Who are you people? Is the house okay?" Captain Ruiz did not move from his spot. "Good evening," he said. "I am Captain Ruiz with the Austin Fire Department. This is Detective Bridges with APD. We responded to a call from Ms. Hart regarding a potential fire hazard." Brooke gave a short laugh that did not match her widened eyes. "A hazard," she repeated. "Is this about the wiring? We keep telling her to update everything, but you know how she is with change. Eve, did you call them because the microwave sparked again?" I let her speak. It gave her more rope. Naomi looked up from her notebook, her gaze steady on Brooke. "Ms. Hart also reported 2 individuals walking around the house with gas cans," she said, "shortly before your vehicle returned." Danny made a small choking sound. "What?" he said. That is insane." Brooke turned toward the detective, eyebrows lifting, smile planted back in place. "She must have misunderstood," Brooke said. "She's been having episodes, detective. Confusion, paranoid thoughts. The doctors think it could be the early stages of something. We have been trying to get her more care." Captain Ruiz cleared his throat. "We found an accelerant poured around the exterior foundation," he said. "It is gasoline. There is a clear pour pattern along both sides of the structure and across the back. It appears deliberate." Brooke's fingers tightened on the strap of her purse. The smile stayed, but it strained at the edges. "There are gardeners," she said quickly. "We had a landscaping crew here 2 days ago. They use all kinds of equipment. Maybe they spilled something." Ruiz reached into a paper evidence bag on the coffee table and lifted the corner of a photograph with a gloved hand. The picture showed a dark stripe of wet earth hugging my front wall, tiny granules of mulch glistening. "This was taken 15 minutes ago," he said. "There was no sign of any landscaping crew." Naomi tapped her pen once against the notebook. "Ms. Hart," she said, turning her head slightly, "can you repeat for us what you told us earlier?" I adjusted my grip on the coffee mug. The ceramic was still warm against my palm. "I was upstairs in the front guest room," I said. "I saw Danny's SUV turn into the drive-in park. I watched Brooke and Danny remove 2 red gas cans from the trunk. They walked in opposite directions around the house. I saw their arms move as if pouring. A few minutes later, I began to smell gasoline." Brooke made a small sound of disbelief. "Eve," she said gently, "you were resting, sweetie. You are mixing things up. Danny, say something." Danny swallowed. "Mom," he said, voice cracking. "We just got back from dinner. We can show you the receipt. Ember and Oak downtown. Ask the staff. We have been there for hours." Naomi did not look at him. She flipped a page in her notebook. "The reservation was for 7:30, she said. "According to the manager I spoke with, you arrived at 7:48 and left your table at 8:23. The restaurant is 30 to 40 minutes from here, depending on traffic." She lifted her eyes. "We received Ms. Hart's code Amber call at 6:51. She went on and arrived on scene shortly after 7:20. We observed no vehicle in the driveway at that time. At approximately 7:40, we saw a dark SUV matching yours pull past the house slow and continue down the road. At 8:12, the same vehicle turned into the drive and parked. Our units were staged out of direct sight at the end of the street." Danny's face drained of color. "You were watching us?" he asked. "Ms. Hart requested security support," Naomi replied. "Her private firm looped us in." Brooke reached into her purse with jerky motions and pulled out a folded slip of paper. "Here," she said, handing it toward Naomi. "Our receipt, time-stamped. You can see we were at dinner. You cannot honestly think we would light a match around her house." Ruiz tilted his head. "Nobody has mentioned a match," he said, "only gasoline." For the first time since they walked in, Brooke had no ready answer. Naomi took the receipt, glanced at it, then set it on the table beside the photograph. "Financial records show significant outstanding debts in Mr. Hart's name," she said. "Approximately $200,000 to a casino in Baton Rouge and various private parties. 6 months ago, you also took out a life insurance policy on Ms. Hart for $3 million, naming the 2 of you as beneficiaries." Brooke's eyes snapped to me. "You have been digging through our finances," she asked, the charm wiped clean. "You snooped on your own family." "You have been dosing my tea," I replied. "Everyone has their hobbies." Danny stared at me, mouth slightly open. "Tea," he repeated. "Digoxin, sir?" I said. "You remember Danny, the little green pills Brooke told you were good for my heart." Ruiz watched the back and forth like he was tracking a slow-moving fire line. Naomi closed her notebook. Mr. Hart, Ms. Caldwell Hart, she said, "You are not under arrest at this moment, but you are being detained for further questioning regarding attempted arson and potential attempted harm to Ms. Hart. Officers are waiting outside to transport you to the station." Brooke did not move right away. She stood in the middle of my living room rug chest, rising and falling, fingers flexing around the handle of her purse. "This is a mistake," she said. "Evelyn is confused. She records everything, twists it. She does not like that we are trying to help with her care. She is afraid of losing control." Control, the word hung in the air. I set my mug on the table with care. "You should know something, Brooke," I said. "I changed my will this morning. You and Danny are no longer in it." Danny's head snapped in my direction. "You what?" he said. "The new will is signed and notarized," I went on. "Filed with my attorney and backed up in 3 separate locations. I believe in redundancy." It was a petty detail to include in that moment. I included it anyway. The security man at the archway stepped aside as 2 uniformed officers entered. Red and blue lights flickered through the front window and brushed across the walls, turning the family photos into a stop-motion blur. "Ma'am, sir," one of the officers said, "we need you to come with us." Danny let them take his wrists without much resistance. When the cuffs clicked, he flinched as if the sound hurt. Brooke twisted once, testing the grip on her arms. For a second, our eyes met. Hatred, clear and sharp and alive, burned in hers. It was hotter than the summer air, hotter than gasoline, hotter than any fire she had planned. Then she looked past me toward the doorway where the night waited outside. They led them out, one by one. The patrol car doors opened and shut. Engines started. The lights washed the room red, then blue, then red again before disappearing down the hill. When the house was quiet, I stood up, walked to the front window, and touched the glass. It was cooler now. The smell of gasoline still clung faintly to the shrubs outside. Behind me, the smoke detector's red light blinked in the hall, bright against the dim. One more entry in the log. The cameras came before the sun had fully burned through the morning haze. I woke to the sound of a diesel engine and the faint whir of something mechanical outside my window. When I drew back the curtain in the living room, a white news van sat at the curb. Its satellite dish pointed at the sky like a curious metal flower. A second van parked behind its logo in red and blue, a reporter already in full makeup talking to a man with a clipboard. Across the street, Mr. Ortiz stood in his yard with a mug of coffee staring. Mia had moved from her porch to her front steps, camera in hand. Mrs. Gallagher hovered at the edge of her driveway robe tied too tightly. Red tally lights blinked on top of the cameras. Microphones pointed at my house. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I let it buzz 3 times before I picked up. "Morning," Marcus said. His voice sounded like it had gone to sleep in a briefcase. "You watching the circus?" "I am looking at it," I said. "You are going to see your face on every local channel in about 15 minutes, he said. Paper rustled on his end. APD made the incident report public. Somebody leaked that Code Amber was involved. "Good," I said. He paused. "Not the word I expected," he admitted. "I spent 30 years pretending to be invisible," I said. "It did not stop my son from trying to kill me. Let them look." There was a beat of silence, then a sigh. "I will be there in half an hour," he said. "Do not talk to anyone with a mic." I set the phone down and watched one of the reporters practice a line. Her lips moved around the words tech billionaire and murder plot. The phrasing did not quite sit right in her mouth. At 9, someone knocked on my door. It was not a reporter. It was Mrs. Gallagher clutching a casserole dish under a floral towel. "Good morning, Ms. Hart," she said when I opened the door. Her voice trembled. We heard about what happened. I made a thing. It is chicken. Or maybe tuna. I cannot remember which I took out of the freezer, but it is hot." Behind her, Mr. Ortiz and Mia hovered with their own offerings. A foil-covered tray, a paper bag from a bakery. For a second, the sight of them on my porch arms full of food made something in my throat tighten. "Come in," I said. The kitchen filled quickly. Pots clinked, cabinets banged, the microwave beeped as people tried to find space for everything. Mr. Ortiz insisted on making coffee. The smell soon replaced the faint ghost of gasoline that had lingered overnight. "We have all been watching the news," Mrs. Gallagher said, setting her dish down. "But we have eyes. We saw things long before the cameras showed up." Mia nodded, her ponytail bouncing. "They fought all the time," she said. "Like loud. I recorded some of it because it was right against my wall and I was going to ask the landlord to do something. I did not think it would end up as evidence." She looked at me, cheeks flushed. "Do the police want it?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "they do." Mr. Ortiz blew on his coffee. "That boy only drove up this hill when a new car showed up in your drive," he said. "Forgive me, Ms. Hart, but he never looked like someone coming to check on his mama, more like someone checking inventory. Mrs. Gallagher glanced toward the living room where a camera crew shifted outside my front window like fish in a tank. "Last month she asked me what you had told me about your will," she said, voice dropping. "Brooke said she was worried you would forget to include Danny if your mind got worse. I told her you seemed sharp as ever." She did not like that answer, Mia said. They stayed almost an hour talking in circles that all came back to the same point. Small things that had seemed like personality quirks at the time now lined up like bullet points. Questions about money, visits that always ended with a favor, raised voices through thin walls. When Detective Bridges arrived, they were ready for her. Mia handed over a flash drive. Mrs. Gallagher gave her dates and times scribbled on the back of an envelope. Mr. Ortiz offered a spiral notebook where he had written down license plate numbers of unfamiliar cars that came up the hill late at night. Naomi took it all, her expression calm but intent. "This is helpful," she said. "It shows a pattern." Pattern, another word I liked. After they left, the house felt too quiet. Even with the news vans humming at the curb, the inside of the ranch seemed to exhale. Marcus showed up at Tentai, already loosened dark circles carved under his eyes. "Your neighbor made me take a brownie," he said, holding up a napkin wrapped square as he stepped in. "If I fall asleep mid-sentence, that is on her." He put his briefcase on the dining table and snapped it open. Folders, legal pads, a laptop, a bottle of water. "Here's where we are," he said, sitting. "Detective Bridges is filing for warrants on your son's financials and on Brooks' communications. The fire department report supports attempted arson. Toxicology is running expedited panels on your blood. The DA is very interested." "Which DA?" I asked. "Flores," he said. "Young ambitious, hates public corruption and greedy relatives. Her words, not mine." He slid a sheet of paper toward me. "These are likely charges, Bob," he said. "Attempted murder, conspiracy, arson, financial fraud, if they can tie the insurance to a planned crime. This is heavy." In the corner of the page, in small type, someone had written, "Case Hart." Seeing my name in block letters above words like attempted murder made my stomach twist. Marcus studied my face. "Eve," he said quietly, "they are your son and your daughter-in-law. Are you certain you want to push this as far as it can go?" I looked past him through the open doorway to the yard where Danny had once tried to build a treehouse and given up after 3 boards. "They were certain enough to pour gasoline around my walls," I said. "Let us at least meet them at the same distance." A muscle jumped in his jaw. "Then we build the cleanest case possible," he would tell someone, he said. "Everything documented, no loose ends." That afternoon, Heartline Security insisted on moving me to a downtown apartment with guarded access. Protocol, they said. Less exposure. More cameras. The penthouse smelled like new paint and cold air. From the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Austin spread out in a grid of light. Red dots blinked on radio towers and atop high buildings. Far below, traffic flowed in red and white lines. I set my laptop on the glass coffee table and opened the folder I had started years ago. Family of Financial History. Each subfolder carried a year. Each year held scans of checks, bank transfers, emails with subject lines like, "One last time, Mom," and "It will be different now." Some of them I had read so often the sentences had worn grooves in my mind. I made a list in the notebook as I went. Tuition. Rent. Credit card bailouts. Rehab that never happened. Casino markers in Atlantic City. Casino markers in Lake Charles. Private loans to shady accounts when the banks had said no. As the numbers added up, so did the weight behind my ribs. More than $2 million in total. Under repayment, I drew a neat 0. My phone buzzed. "Naomi." "We are at your son's house," she said. "The bank let us in with the foreclosure contact. There is something you should see." The house Danny shared with Brooke sat 15 minutes from mine in a gated community with manicured lawns and decorative street lamps. By the time I arrived with Marcus, squad cars lined the curb. A moving crew was there too, clearing out furniture for storage. Inside, the air smelled like dust and old air freshener. The living room was a skeleton of itself, couch-gone faint rectangles on the walls where pictures had hung. "In here," Naomi called. She stood in what must have been the master bedroom next to an open wall safe. A mover in a gray shirt hovered near the door, holding a manila envelope between thumb and forefinger like it might bite. "We found this," he said. "It was behind some insurance policies." Naomi handed me the envelope. My name was written on the front in a familiar looping hand. "Eve, if anything happens to me." My fingers trembled around the edges of the paper. I slid it open carefully. Inside was a single sheet of stationery yellowed a little at the edges. David's handwriting filled the page. He wrote about Danny and Brooke asking questions he did not like. Questions about what would happen if we both died, about how fast wills moved, about who controlled the money if I became mentally unfit. He admitted he had kept it from me because he did not want to poison the way I looked at our son. He told me that if I was reading this and something felt off, I should trust that feeling. By the time I reached his signature, my eyes burned. Marcus took a respectful step back. Naomi watched me, expression softened. This shows premeditation stretching back years, she said. They were probing for opportunities long before you noticed anything. I folded the letter along its old crease and slid it back into the envelope. It also shows that my husband saw what I did not, I said. He tried to leave me a warning. Naomi nodded once. I am taking a copy for the file, she said. You keep the original. The next morning, Marcus and I sat across from Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Flores in her office downtown. The walls were lined with framed newspaper articles and degrees. A red light on her phone blinked as the messages came in faster than she could clear them. She had spread my documents across her desk. Bank statements, the insurance scans, Mia's audio transcripts, photographs from the fire report, notes from Naomi, a copy of David's letter. This is a prosecutor's dream, she said, tapping a fingertip against one of the pages. A paper trail that walks and talks. She looked at me. I intend to charge both Daniel Hart and Brooke Caldwell Hart with attempted murder, arson conspiracy, and associated fraud, she said. We will argue that the digoxin poisoning was part of a long-term plan to impair your credibility and make your death look natural. Your records make that argument stronger. She turned to Marcus. I will need you to prepare your client for testimony, she said. She is not just a victim here. She is our most effective historian of this mess. Historian. I thought of all the years I had spent writing everything down, the endless logs and backups that had irritated everyone except the people who needed them when things broke. This will go to a grand jury within the week, Rebecca said. After that, we move quickly. Outside her window, a crane moved against the skyline. At its tip, a small red light blinked, steady as a heartbeat. I opened my notebook, turned to a fresh page, and wrote down the date. Another entry. The first day of trial started with another red light. This one blinked above the metal detector at the entrance to the Travis County Courthouse. Every time someone walked through it, flashed and beeped. Shoes scuffed on the floor. A bailiff directed people to empty their pockets and hold out their arms. Marcus slid my purse into a gray plastic tray. Deep breath, he said. I am breathing, I answered. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor polish. The ceilings were high and the windows narrow. Light came in thin strips, making the dust in the air visible. Reporters waited just inside the doors, clustered near a piece of blue tape on the floor, where they had decided the best shot was. Microphones sprouted from their hands. When they saw me, the group shifted like a flock. Ms. Hart, someone called, do you forgive your son? How does it feel to face him in court? Are you worried about being cross-examined? Marcus stepped between me and the microphones. No questions, will, he said. We will let the process speak for itself. He said it like a man who had been saying the same sentence all week. Inside the courtroom, the air was cooler. A ceiling fan turned lazily overhead, adding a faint wobble to the fluorescent light. The judge's bench faced rows of wooden pews. The jury box sat to the left, empty for the moment. The prosecutor's table was on one side, the defense tables on the other. Danny sat at the closer defense table, wearing a suit that hung a little loose on him. His hair had been cut short, his jaw clean-shaved. Without stubble and without the casual clothes, he looked younger and smaller, like someone had taken out half his stuffing. Brooke sat at the far table in a navy dress and pearls that looked too bright against her pale throat. Her hair was pulled back in a low chignon. She could have been a junior executive in any downtown office if not for the deputy at her shoulder. Their eyes both went to me when Marcus led me to the front row behind the prosecution table. Danny's gaze stuck. Brooks slid past me over the jury box toward the judge's bench, measuring angles. Judge Ellen Park entered in black robes and rimless glasses. The bailiff called everyone to rise. When we sat again, wood creaked under the collective weight. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Judge Park said, you are here to hear the case of the state of Texas versus Daniel Hart and Brooke Caldwell Hart. Rebecca Flores stood. Her dark hair was pulled into a neat knot. There was no paper in her hands, only a pen she rolled between her fingers as she stepped into the well of the courtroom. Good morning, she said, turning slightly so she faced both the jury and the judge. Over the next several days, you will hear about a woman who built a company from a garage into a global success, raised a son after losing her husband, and expected nothing more in return than ordinary human decency. She paused, letting the words settle. You will also hear about what happens when greed and desperation take root, where love should be. She walked slowly along the rail. The evidence will show that Daniel Hart and his wife Brooke Caldwell Hart did not want to wait for nature to run its course. Instead, they poisoned Evelyn Hart over months with a powerful medication, digoxin, to mimic natural decline. When that did not kill her quickly enough, they planned a fire. They poured gasoline around her home. They arranged an alibi. They expected to collect $3 million in insurance money and inherit the rest. Her voice stayed smooth without theatrics. The law calls it attempted murder and arson, she said. You may call it something else. Your job is to decide whether the evidence matches those charges. Danny's attorney spoke next. He was older than Marcus, with thinning hair and a habit of pushing his glasses up his nose when he was nervous. Daniel Hart is a flawed man, he told the jury. He has made mistakes. He gambled. He took money he should not have taken. He let his wife influence him far more than he should have. But he did not want his mother dead. He was caught in a storm of debt and manipulation, pushed into a situation he did not fully understand. Brooks' attorney rose last. He wore a dark suit and a watch that flashed in the light when he gestured. My client, Brooke Caldwell Hart, is not the villain of a late-night true crime rerun. He is the all hate kid. She married into a wealthy but controlling family. She tried to care for a mother-in-law who refused help, who used money as a leash, who recorded conversations and collected documents like weapons. When Mrs. Hart realized her son might not live up to her expectations, she turned that arsenal on him and his wife. What you will see here is not a murder plot, but a matriarch's campaign to maintain power. Marcus leaned slightly toward me. Do not react, he murmured. I am not the one on camera this time, I said. When they called my name, I walked to the witness stand and took the oath. The wood railing was smooth under my hand. The microphone on the stand smelled faintly of dust and something metallic. Rebecca started with the easy questions. My name, my age, Heartline, how I had started it when I sold it, how many employees I had at peak. She let me talk about the work, about nights in the garage with servers running too hot, about writing code and firing people who tried to steal. She moved from there to Danny. When he was born, what he had been like at 8, at 15, at 25. How I had paid for his school, his first apartment, his second chance after the first big gambling disaster. Why did you continue to help him financially? She asked. Because he was my son, I said. Because I thought if I caught him every time he would eventually learn not to jump. A small murmur went through the gallery. Judge Park lifted a hand and the room went quiet again. Rebecca asked about the pills, the confusion that came in waves, waking up in the hospital that last time, hearing the conversation in the room while I pretended to sleep. The heat of their breath, the words Baton Rouge and Ember and Oak and Fire. She walked me through the afternoon. I came home, through the soup, through the missing batteries and the smoke detectors, through the call to Heartline Security. My voice was steady. I had rehearsed the facts so many times they sat in my mouth like beads on a string. When she finished, Brooks' attorney rose. He smiled the way a man smiles at someone he finds difficult, not dangerous. Mrs. Hart, he said, you testified that you built a company from nothing and kept meticulous records of everything in your life. Would you say you like control? The word hung there. I like information, I said. Which gives you control, Visha, he replied. You record conversations, you keep files on your own son's finances, you hire investigators to follow your family. Is that correct? I hired investigators when I believed someone might be stealing from me, I said. Money is traceable. He stepped closer to the rail. Do you ever ask your son not to accept your money if you He asked. I thought of all the times I had begged him to stop calling, to stand on his own 2 feet, to get a job and keep it. No, I said. I did not ask him to stop. So he continued to ask, and you continued to give, the attorney said. And that allowed you to remind him regularly who held the purse strings. I did not hold it over his head when he disagreed with me, I said. No, he asked. Never said something like, if you do not do what I want, I will cut you off. No, I said. Not even once in 30 years. I hesitated. Not because I remembered such a statement, but because the question itself was a trap. A flat no sounded less believable than a flaw. I may have raised my voice, I said. I do not recall threatening him with poverty. He pushed his glasses up his nose, sensing the tiny opening. Is it possible, he said, that your son and his wife felt trapped by your generosity, that they felt watched, judged, and recorded? It is possible they felt many things, I said. None of those things required them to poison me. He let the line sit, then shifted. You have a sharp tongue, Mrs. Hart, he said. Would you agree that you can be harsh when you are angry? I thought of the night I told Danny I was done paying off his markers and still wired the money. Sometimes, I said. He nodded like he had just proven a point. No further questions, he said. Dr. Priya Nair took the stand after me. She wore a simple blazer and spoke with the calm of someone used to explaining terrifying things in measured tones. She described digoxin, its therapeutic uses, its dangers, how in the wrong doses it caused nausea, confusion, visual disturbances, arrhythmias, how in elderly patients it could easily be mistaken for natural decline without specific testing. Rebecca handed her the lab reports from my hospital stays. Based on these results, Rebecca asked, "What can you tell the jury?" The levels of digoxin in Ms. Hart's blood were consistently above what would be expected from a standard prescription, Dr. Nair said. They suggest repeated dosing with the intention of maintaining a state of mild toxicity. Over time, this could have resulted in cardiac arrest. Could Ms. Hart have accidentally caused this level of toxicity herself? Rebecca asked. Dr. Nair shook her head. It is unlikely, she said. The pattern here indicates controlled administration by someone who understood the drug and adjusted the doses. Danny's attorney tried to suggest I might have misread pill bottles or doubled up by mistake. Dr. Nair answered each hypothetical with cool, specific explanations. The science did not care about excuses. Later, Rebecca queued up the audio recording from Danny's car. The courtroom speakers crackled. Then the sound of wipers on glass came through. Rain. A familiar hum of an engine. Brooke's voice. Once the fire is done, it is paperwork, she said on the recording. Insurance pays. Probate moves faster when the body is clean. Hearing the words again made my skin crawl. In the recording, Danny's voice shook. She is still my mother, he said. She is old, Brooke replied. This is just nature with help. At counsel table, Danny bent forward and pressed his fingers to his forehead. Brooke sat upright, eyes on some middle-distance, jaw clenched tight. They called Brooke to the stand on the third day. Her attorney led her through her childhood, her work in pharmaceuticals, her marriage to Danny. She kept her voice soft. Her eyes shone at the right moments. She dabbed her nose with a tissue when she described how confusing my moods had become. I tried to get her help, she said. Therapists, neurologists, anything. She refused. She accused us of stealing. She put cameras in the house. She hid her money and then yelled that it was missing. Did you ever poison your mother-in-law? Her attorney asked. No, she said firmly. I never poisoned anyone. Did you ever pour gasoline around her house? He asked. No, she said again. We drove past because we saw flashing lights. We turned around to check on her. The police twisted that. When Rebecca stood for cross-examination, the room had gone very still. Ms. Caldwell Hart, she said, you worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative for 8 years, correct? Yes, Brooke said. So you received training in medications, dosages, and side effects, Rebecca said. Basic training, Brooke replied. I am not a doctor. Basic training that would allow you to recognize the signs of digoxin toxicity in a 72-year-old, Rebecca said. Yet you testified that you saw confusion, dizziness, and vision problems in Ms. Hart and assumed it was mental illness, not possible poisoning. Brooke shifted in the chair. I did not know she was being poisoned, she said. But you knew what digoxin was, Rebecca said. You knew how to obtain it. And bottles labeled as Ms. Hart's heart medication were found in your home with lot numbers traced back to a clinic contact of yours. Brooke did not answer right away. I kept track of her meds, she said finally. That was part of caring for her. Rebecca let the jury sit with that answer for a second before she asked her final question. When you told your husband that nature needed help, she said, what did you mean? Brooke's hands tightened in her lap. For the first time, the warm caregiver mask slipped. The hardness under it showed. I meant, she said, that she was going to die anyway. The jurors watched her face. Some looked at me. I met their eyes one after another and did not look away. By the end of the week, everything had been said that could be said. Judge Park instructed the jury. The bailiff led them out. The door to the deliberation room closed with a soft click. Time slowed in the courtroom. People shifted on benches. Lawyers checked their phones. A deputy whispered something to another. I sat in the front row, hands folded, eyes on the empty jury box. When the door finally opened again and the jurors filed back in, their faces were careful. The foreperson held a stack of forms. Judge Park asked for the verdicts. The clerk read the charges. On the count of attempted murder of Evelyn Hart, the foreperson said, we find the defendant Daniel Hart guilty. Danny's shoulders sagged. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, the foreperson continued, we find the defendant Daniel Hart guilty. The words rolled on. Guilty on arson. Guilty on the same charges for Brooke with additional guilty findings for poisoning and fraud. Judge Park thanked the jurors and set a date for sentencing. The room buzzed as people stood. Deputies moved in to take Danny and Brooke back into custody. As they passed my row, Danny looked up. Mom, he said, voice raw, I am sorry. For a heartbeat, I saw him at 8, holding a broken toy in both hands, eyes bright with tears. I know, I said, it does not change what you did. The deputies led them through the side door. When it closed behind them, the red exit sign above it glowed in the dim, steady, and silent. 6 months later, the sound that woke me was not a monitor or a siren. It was the ocean. The window in my bedroom at the Santa Cruz house faced west. When I opened my eyes, the light already had that pale, rinsed quality it gets after fog. The curtains were breathing in and out with the breeze. From beyond the glass, waves thudded against the shore, steady and patient. I lay there for a moment listening. No air conditioner, no hallway cart, no jail bars clanking on the news. Just water gulls and the faint murmur of someone walking a dog on the path below. In the kitchen, the smoke detector in the corner blinked a tiny red light. New house, new wiring, new system. The security company had insisted on installing it themselves. Every sensor came with 3 backups. They knew their client. I made coffee and carried the mug out to the small deck. The wood was still cool under my bare feet. The fog had pulled back far enough to show a strip of blue above the water. The air smelled of salt and something faintly metallic from the railing. Next door, Eleanor's screen door creaked. She stepped out in a quilted robe, silver hair pulled into a lopsided bun. She lifted her own mug in greeting. "You are up early," she called across the narrow gap between our decks. "Old habits," I said. We met at the low fence that separated our yards, mugs cradled in both hands. A pelican skimmed the surface of the water wings inches from the waves. "Got your mail by mistake again," she said, handing me a single envelope. "Your lawyer has terrible handwriting." I recognized Marcus's return address. The envelope was thin, no need to open it to guess the contents. Another update on appeals motions hearings that did not require my presence. "Thank you," I said. "You want me to go through it and only tell you if anyone escaped?" She asked, one eyebrow up. "I will risk reading it," I said. She studied my face for a second. "They sentenced them last month, right?" she asked. "You never said how it went." Everyone in my book club was trying to guess from the news ticker. I remembered the courtroom that day, the way Judge Park's voice had stayed steady as she read out the terms. Life in prison for both, no possibility of parole. Restitution figures that would never be paid, not in any meaningful way. It was quiet, I said, no shouting, just numbers and years. "And you," she said, "you sat there and did not faint or throw anything. Impressive." "I thought about throwing my shoe," I said. "I like the shoe too much." She laughed, the sound bright in the morning air. Then her expression softened. "Any regrets?" she asked. It had become a ritual between us, that question. I looked out at the line where the ocean met the sky. The sun was higher now, turning the surface into a sheet of scattered light. "About living here instead of Austin?" I said, "Not a single one." "You know that is not the version of the question that counts." I took a sip of coffee. It had cooled enough to taste the bitterness properly. "I miss the version of my son I thought I had," I said. "The boy who fell asleep on the back seat after soccer games, the teenager who brought home stray cats. I do not miss the man who poured gasoline around my house." Eleanor nodded. "That seems fair," she said. The mail stayed unopened on the table until after lunch. When I finally slid a finger under the flap, the letter inside was short. Marcus, in his careful print, summed up the status. Appeals filed, motions denied, no change in custody. He had added one line at the bottom that was more human than legal. They both asked if you would visit. I stared at the words until they blurred. The house was very quiet. Somewhere outside, a truck backed up the beep, carrying up the hill. I folded the letter in half, then in half again, and placed it between the pages of my notebook instead of in the trash. Later, at my desk in the corner of the living room, I opened my laptop. The document on the screen already had several pages. I had started it the week after the sentencing when sleeping was difficult and everyone wanted interviews. It was not a book, at least not yet. It was something between a statement and a log. The cursor blinked near the bottom of the screen, a tiny green bar rhythmically appearing and disappearing. I preferred it to red. I scrolled up. Lines about David in the hospital. Notes on the first time Brooke corrected a nurse on my medication before the nurse could answer. The day I told Danny I was done paying and still transferred the funds. The way the hallway clock in the ranch house had sounded the night I waited at the window. Dates times descriptions of light and smell. It read more like system documentation than a confession. That was fine. Documentation had kept servers from catching fire for years. It seemed only polite to give my life the same courtesy. I put my fingers on the keys and wrote about the verdict. About Danny's face when the word guilty hit the air. About the way Brooke's shoulders stayed squared all the way to the door. About the red exit sign glowing overhead. At some point, the words slowed. I stopped, listened to the ocean, and saved the file under 3 different names in 3 different folders. Old habits. In the late afternoon, Eleanor knocked on my sliding door. "I come with bribes," she said, holding up a bottle of white wine and 2 glasses. "The wind is right for a sunset." We sat on the deck while the day folded itself up. The sky shifted from blue to pink to a deep, smoldering orange. The sun dropped toward the horizon, flattening into a bright coin. Its reflection stretched across the water like a path made of fire. I rested my elbows on the railing. The wood had warmed under the sun and held the heat. You used to watch a different kind of fire, Eleanor said quietly. I used to watch little red lights on servers and smoke detectors, I said. Now I like it better when the red is very far away. Down the coast, a buoy bobbed its light blinking red at measured intervals. Ships used it to avoid the rocks, a warning and a guide at the same time. Eleanor poured the wine, handing me a glass. To what do we drink tonight? She asked. I thought about the question. Not to justice. That was a word for other people to use, not to revenge. That tasted wrong in my mouth. To the fact that we are still here, I said. On this deck, with decent wine. She clinked her glass against mine. I will drink to that, she said. We sat in silence until the sun slid beneath the line of the sea and the first chill crept in off the water. Lights flicked on in the house behind us. One in the hallway, one over the stove, one in my small office. In the corner of the ceiling, the smoke detector's red light blinked bright and unremarkable. Inside my notebook on the table, Marcus's letter rested between pages filled with my own handwriting. Next to it, a list of dates and a single sentence I had written the night I moved in. The story continues here. Not as a threat, not as a promise, just a fact. I finished my wine, watched the last trace of color fade from the sky, and went inside to turn off the lights I did not need. The red one in the corner kept blinking small and steady in the dark. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.